Since 2020, I have played countless hours of Animal Crossing. I have decorated an unhealthy amount of islands and placed an obscene amount of furniture, so I thought it was about time that I sat down, racked my brain, and came up with an ultimate decorating guide to Animal Crossing New Horizons. And that's right, today I'm finally going to share with you all the tips and tricks you need to know to make your islands beautiful. So sit tight, grab a snack, and hit the like button, and we'll get started. Firstly, the wide display stand and the elaborate display case give the illusion of glass, and you can actually put items inside of these. So these are wonderful items for making shop fronts, and you can add a custom design to the back of the wide display stand if you want a little bit more detail. The wide display stand also makes for a cute way to display your favorite fish as a fancy little aquarium design. Next up, I want to talk about umbrellas. Umbrellas are great for using as like a little bit of a decor piece that sometimes perhaps we don't have a particular item you want in the game, so you can use the custom designs to add that extra flair. Like fish boxes are a great one. You can also do whole builds around umbrellas. My favorite ones that I've done using them was my berry farm, where I used them as little berry bushes, and also a little sunflower field as well, because as much as I would love sunflowers in the game, we just don't have them, unfortunately. So definitely scour the internet, see what different codes you can find for these wonderful umbrella designs. If you are wanting to create an authentic looking winter island, you may not want to fill it with lots of foliage, but you also don't want your island to look bare. One of the ways that I like to fill space on wintry, snowy islands is to use the glowing moss furniture. When customized, these look like snow piles or little snowballs, so they are really great to have dotted around your islands. You can also customize the cube lights to make them look like little blocks of ice. Again, this is another great way to fill up some space if you have it. The 2.0 update brought with it lots of new fencing options and also the ability to customize fencing, which was hugely welcome. However, the fencing does have a large placement area, which means that you can't always get things up close to the fencing area. If you're looking for more of a cluttered look, then definitely think about other alternatives that are available, such as the rope fence, plant partitions, wooden partitions, or even the good old traditional log stakes. This will allow you to place things right up against that fencing area and just make it look a little bit more cozier. Another fencing top tip is not to place all of your fences in one long line. Unless you're doing a normcore island, then this is definitely acceptable. But in reality, when it comes to decorating, I tend to break up my fences, maybe have one or two little areas where there might be a little bit of fencing, and then move it back or move it forward just to keep the level of interest in the area, and they do make for great decor accent pieces as well. Simple panels are one of the most versatile items in ACNH, and customizing them is a great way to create fake buildings. If making big fake buildings is daunting for you, then simply placing simple panels customized to a window design in front of furniture, such as furniture like the storefronts, the medieval building sides, even the castle walls, will make for a super easy but effective looking building. You can also use this technique with gazebos. There's a few different types, and pergolas as well. Really simple, really effective. You can also use simple panels to create doors. One of my favorite ways to use door codes is to create a little mini shed. So you just put two storefronts together and then have a simple panel acting as a door. If you don't have a simple panel and you don't know what to use as a door, then consider using a wooden storage shed, as they can be a great alternative for a door. If you have placed some simple panels and they're looking a bit flat, think about some tall items that you can place behind to add depth to your builds. One of my favorite items is using the loft bed with desk, and also wardrobes are great because you can place items on top of them, but there are so many good items that are perfect for this, and you can really have a play around. Alternatively, you could add height to your buildings by creating a cliff behind, and then you can place another building level if you wanted to, so you could add another floor with more storefronts, etc. Or you can create the illusion of a roof by using some fencing, as these are the perfect height. The Zen fence looks particularly roof-like, or if you're building during winter, consider using the hedges to create the illusion of a snow-capped rooftop. If you do decide to use this technique, then you could also leave a little accessible space for a rooftop area. Simply place a ladder to access and you can have some smaller decor items, and there you go. You have a really nice, easy roof space, and this can be a great lookout point as well to admire some of the stunning views on your island. Simple panels do repeat, and if this isn't what you want, you can use other items or low simple panels to intersect the design, like I did here for this florist. As you can see, I've used a little flower kind of stand thing to hide the simple panel, but I've also used the low simple panels, so mixing and matching them also works nicely. But simple panels aren't just good for creating fake buildings, you can also use them to add backdrops to your build, for example like with this fencing. Also, when I pick out my codes, I will very often select some shelf options, as I like combining these with stools. Placing a simple panel shelf design behind a stool will give it more depth and really showcase what you are selling. Whilst also thinking about backdrops, don't be afraid to turn items around. For example, the rock climbing wall has a great height, but from the front it won't fit with most builds. However, if you turn it around, there are some really great patterns on the back for the different variations. If you're doing more of a natural island, you may want to embrace cliffs in the background. If this is the case, definitely think about adding some pizzazz by using vines and even the occasional ladder along the edge. These are not only functional but also look super cute. Whilst we're still on the topic of backgrounds, this also applies to placement of items. So when you're creating your builds, and particularly smaller builds, one of the general rules that I always follow is placing taller items at the back of a build and then having those smaller items at front so you don't obstruct the view. When talking about smaller items, I'm not just talking about furniture. There are so many items in the game that can be dropped or placed. One of the things that I love to place is tools. These work wonderfully for garden builds. You can place a shovel in the plot, it would look lovely. And maybe you have an orchard. If so, a ladder placed may be the perfect accessory so that your villager can reach the fruit. Or maybe you have a tree farm, then adding an axe would work wonderfully. Dropped fruit and vegetables also work great for this type of scenario. Placing fruit on top of cardboard boxes is such a cute addition to orchards. Mushrooms and pine cones are also a good addition if you're working on a forest or an autumn island. And if you are working on a forest island, definitely try dropping these on top of items such as log stools or stone stools, just for like an extra overgrown feel, as the mushrooms in particular, they kind of feel like they're growing out of the logs then. Clothing items are also a great accent piece, not only for more obvious builds like your sewing areas or clothes shops, but also for your beaches and picnic areas. I have been obsessed with placing the wide brim straw hat for a very long time, and dropping the occasional sock here and there, it is a problem. Shoes are also a great item placed, as there are so many different types. You can always find one to suit the occasion, whether it be a slipper for a spa or some Wellington boots for a fishing spot. Do not forget that you can also pick and drop flowers for decoration. These are great for spring court islands, meadow islands, and maybe you could add them on top of a path for just an extra detail. If you place a flower, it will also appear in a small vase, which is something that I definitely don't see enough, and I often forget to do it. So here is your reminder to do it. I could literally go on all day about droppable items, but we would be here a very long time if I did. But just quickly remember that there are lots of items from Red's raffle, including food items and tiny books. You can also drop seed packets, fish bait and saplings. I think those are my top ones, but my best recommendation for this, if you're thinking about dropping items, is have a good think about what items will complement your build. And once you've finished your build, maybe go around, and if you think it's missing something, then go on a dropping spree. Just ignore what Isabel says. She might not be happy with you, but it will look great. Another thing which is super important when it comes to making your island feel fuller is definitely foliage and flowers. When it comes to decorating with flowers, I normally pick a few particular flowers in a few colors for my island, and then I will use these throughout. Not only will this help your island feel cohesive, but it will also make it easier to get your hands on the flowers. But this will also work for particular areas. If you want to highlight like a certain villager home, then just think about a few different colors that you could use there, and everything will look just that little bit more put together. When planting flowers in open areas, I will also try and separate out the placement of the same flowers to prevent them looking repetitive. I also avoid placing flowers too closely together, so I will normally add a gap in between, maybe drop a custom design or another item just to spread them out. Unless you're doing like a flower field, then that's obviously slightly different, and I will cram as many flowers in as I can. Having a space in between does mean that the flowers can spread when it rains or if you water them. If you don't want duplicate flowers, then remember to place a transparent custom code or fill a custom design to prevent this. If you don't want flowers just randomly placed, this is like a throwback decor hack, and this is from like 2020 when everyone would lay dirt down, the in-game path dirt, and then put little flowers on top. But this is just still a classic. You can't go wrong with this, and making little lines, little flower beds with the different kinds of dirt looks amazing. Flowers also stunt when planted on beaches, so they make great decor accent pieces at all stages. So you can plant them straight out of the seed packet and they will look like little sprouts, which is really adorable. And if you hate decorating your beaches, you can just spray some up with a few little flowers to get the job done. And it just adds a little bit of detail when people come and visit your island. You can also think outside of the box when it comes to using flowers. For example, using them to create a berry farm. I had to pick the flowers to give them this appearance, and it does not stay forever, but they will appear this way if you set your dream address on that particular day when they are at this stage. You can also use purple hyacinths to create a lavender field. Again, this is another classic build idea, but it does work so well. So just think outside of the box, think about what alternatives you can use for your flowers. Trees are also a great option for making your island feel fuller, but when it comes to using trees for decoration, I think there are a few key things to remember. If you are wanting more of a natural feel, do not place all of your trees in straight lines. Place them in a bit more of a random fashion, especially utilizing the diagonal placement. Also, play around with sizes and different types of trees, so this will give different textures and different shapes. And if you still don't know how to stunt trees, then all you have to do is place a piece of fruit, not a coconut though, I've made that mistake too many times, around the base of your tree. Chopping down your trees is also a great filler option for natural areas. You can also chop down little trees to make some very cute, tiny little stumps. They are very adorable. If you're using more of a natural path on your island, curving your custom designs around the tree stumps also makes for a really nice little feature. One of my favorite things to do with the tree stumps is to create a little table setup using the stumps as chairs, and then you can add a nice little table in the middle. Or you could use a wild look bench next to the stump to give the illusion of a felled tree. Aside from trees and flowers, weeds and glowing moss are also a must for adding foliage to your island. Both weeds and glowing moss have different appearances throughout the seasons, so bear that in mind. I love using the glowing moss in winter as there is something magical about its appearance, but my favorite weeds are also the autumnal ones. I highly recommend mixing these into your natural areas just to break up the flowers. Bushes are also a must as they kind of separate the different heights between the flowers and the trees. If the flowers for bushes are not to your liking, maybe they're not the right color that you're after, I try and pick out of season bushes for decorating on purpose just because I love the greenery. When creating natural areas, also don't be afraid to mix in some furniture items into the area. I used to have a hatred for the cutout standees, but in the past year or so, something about them has definitely grown on me. There are also some other furniture pieces that may work well. Here are some examples, such as the wheat fields, mush furniture, and obviously the vine furniture. Also remember, crops are not just for farming. You can definitely incorporate them with your decorating too. A random pumpkin planted here or there will look really, really precious, particularly on autumn islands. Also think about other crops though, so maybe some are not so obvious and how they might work for your particular area you're working on. The sugarcane has some really nice height to it. Okay, that's enough foliage. Let's talk about some pathing. If you do decide to go for in-game pathing, don't forget you can definitely jazz it up if you want to. You can lay custom designs over dirt paths, and that's one of my favorite things to do. Contrasting the dirt with kind of grass paths looks amazing, so you kind of create the inverted look. But you can also add details onto the brick and plank styles too, even if you just decide to go for smaller custom designs just to break up a little bit here and there. There are also some lovely border border designs that people have created if you want the edges to have a little bit of a detail. You can also layer furniture on top of custom designs and in-game paths to add some extra texture. Great options for this include the leaf piles, but also wheat fields, and some things that maybe are not so obvious, such as the scattered papers, particularly for city core islands. If you decide to use the in-game dirt path, you can also plant flowers and weeds on top of it, which adds a nice natural element to the structured path. And also, if you're going for that inverted custom design look, it looks really nice, like they're growing through the path. It's very cute. If you are after a little bit of a different style path and you want to play around with shape more on your island, I highly recommend trying out some of the diagonal paths. There are some really great custom designs that are specifically designed to be diagonally shaped, or you can find codes that alter the kind of in-game path to create the illusion of a diagonal path. They're really fun to play with and see what you can come up with. When it comes to selecting your paths, I do try and stick to having 1 or 2 main paths saved, and I also find smaller path options such as stepping stones and log planks. I do this mainly because mixing and matching your path types will help break up your island, and you can have different themed areas and also kind of keep smaller areas more interesting. Intersecting big path areas with smaller stepping stones and log planks also looks really effective and kind of helps it flow, as opposed to just having big blobs of path paste down everywhere. If you're not a huge fan of terraforming on your islands, but you still want to add depth, you can also use paths to do this. There are a lot of step custom designs that can be added, and they come in a wide variety of themes, such as more natural looking cliffs, like little steps, or more structured brick steps. Paths can also work great for creating land bridges. This can either be an illusion of a land bridge custom design laid over custom design water, or you can add actual terraform the water around it. You can also simply overlay a plank design on a terraform piece of land to create your very own bridge, and then finish it off by adding some fences around the edges to make it feel more bridge-like. You can also get creative with this, add different furniture on the layer below, especially the taller furniture. Some people like to use the swinging bench. That looks really nice, and then it kind of feels like there is a fence there, but it's not attached on the bridge itself. If you want to have a fun map, but don't forget that you can use the in-game path and also terraforming to create some map art. For example, I created a peace sign on my music festival island, but this is just like scratching the surface with this. I have seen some amazing maps, and they are also creative. Terraforming probably does deserve its own dedicated video for tips and tricks, but my number one tip is obviously to make your cliffs and your terraforming look natural. And when doing this, one of the key things is to remember to curve off the edges. This applies both to your rivers and your cliffs, and also play around with how far the cliffs or the water comes out. Make sure that you've got not just one line of big terraforming and kind of intersect it, make little inlets, bring stuff out just to make it feel like it is more naturally occurring, and it will look a lot better. When it comes to water terraforming, do not be afraid to play around with size. Large lakes are really beautiful, but they also make for great space filler, while small ponds allowed you to have multiple different small ponds all dotted around to fill up a space, or you could just have one single adorable little duck pond. The same also applies for water terraforming rivers. Small streams are really hard to get right, but they look so effective, so be patient with this and you can create some beautiful things. Also, never be afraid to create islands with your water terraforming. They really help your water areas look more interesting. You can have tiny little squares which are perfect for a frog on a puddle, maybe a duck. A little spot on a tree with like a little island and some foliage around it is really nice. Or you could even create a whole area which is big enough for a building or a villager home. You can also add a little bit of extra sparkle to your waterfalls by adding some furniture items around them. A little rock at the top of a small waterfall, like directly behind it, can help give the impression that the water is flowing from beneath, like a fresh spring. Using caves to create a rocky style waterfall is also a great trick. I also don't think the wooden field signs are used enough, and they can help give the illusion of water crashing into a pool if you have a water custom design at the bottom. If you are working on a more more elegant island or perhaps a city island and you want a centerpiece, placing a castle gate in front of a waterfall can also give a really nice effect. When terraforming, it is kind of natural to build up and make some nice cliffs. However, do not forget about sunken areas too. To create a sunken area, you just need to build cliffs up around the area that you want to be the sunken kind of focal point. They work great for sunken gardens, walkways, waterfalls, and even ponds. People also are super creative for sinking down furniture items such as pergolas, so you just have the top flowers poking out from the ground. I've also seen builds where they've kind of sunken down a whole bunch of trees and had like a walkway around it, particularly great if you're thinking about a jungle island or a tropical island. Once you have some cliffs, you obviously need a way to access them, and this is where inclines come in. The options for inclines aren't great, they could definitely do with a few more, but I highly recommend picking one to match your theme. For example, for my coastal islands, the colour scheme was very blue and white, so I used the white ones to tie in with that colour scheme. If you're like me and you don't like the actual details of the incline and you prefer to have them hidden away, remember to build them into cliffs and then curve them off, and it just helps make the inclines feel more intentional and built into the island. Otherwise, if you're doing more of a structured island, more city-ish, then you could hide them using some of the taller items like the medieval building sides. That works nicely, and the storefronts do as well. If you have a couple incline slots to spare, you can also use them as a build feature. You can play around with what way you lay them, what direction they are. You can have an easy double forward facing incline layout and decorate around them. This was particularly useful for my museum build as the inclines didn't line up with the entrance. So by using two inclines, I didn't have that annoying off-center approach, which was just really irritating. Bridges can also be a great feature for a build. The conventional way to use them is obviously to access different areas over large waterways, but if you just want to place down the minimum amount of water required for your bridge, you can have a cute little accent piece that you can then decorate around and you can run over. It's just a lot of fun. Placing bridges close together can also make for an interesting design piece. You can place bridges opposite each other so you have the idea of it like flowing out. It looks great in a picture. Or you can place them on separate levels, kind of mess around with the cliffs, have maybe a lower bridge and then an upper bridge. It looks great in photos again. Or change the angles up, so you could have a horizontal placed one and then a diagonal one, and that will make for some interesting kind of shape, and it kind of helps really elevate your waterways on your island. There are a variety of signs that can be customized to show off what a particular area is on your island, but if you want a daintier option, then do not forget about placing flags. This is an adorable way to go, and you can actually place these on top of items for an extra added detail. Customizing cushions has to be one of the oldest tricks in the book, and I still really love this one. There is so many different custom designs you can apply to cushions, and they can be used in a variety of different ways, including parcels for a post office, soil bags for a farm, or even coffee bean bags for your coffee shop. This little hack was shown to me by a viewer, thank you Stephanie, and it is just a really simple trailer design. All you have to do is grab a tractor and a merchandise table, pop down the merchandise table behind, and then you can put items on top of the trailer, and this would look at home on a farm, maybe a full kind of festival setup. This is just wonderfully simple but so effective. If you want your villager homes to feel a little bit more homely, don't forget to add doormat custom designs underneath their front step. All you have to do is walk up super close and then drop down the custom designs. I like to do these too wide normally, and there is specific designs for this, but you can also expand it out, make it even larger if you want to. This next trick I saw on an island tour, and I can't remember who it was, but it is such a great idea. All you have to do to make your own little hot air balloon is a rattan chair and one of the Festivale balloons. Just pop the balloon behind it and it looks like a little hot air balloon. How cute is this? And you can use this in a perspective build. Think about lots of different hot air balloons all in the background. It would look amazing. One of my main mottos for decorating is adding layers and clutter, and part of this is placing items on top of other items. I think some items in the game may also surprise you that you can put furniture items on top of them. Things like the nuptial pillar, the mushroom platform, and also the glowing moss boulders really took me by surprise. If you want to be able to lay down on the grass in the game, you can customize the beach towel to the same grass pattern to create the illusion of you laying on the grass. This works wonderfully if you have a flower field and makes for a great photo opportunity. Using custom designs is also a great way to tie together your builds. For example, here is my lemonade stand. I've used this lemon custom design on the bottles, on the sign, and also on the crates, so you can clearly see what it is, but it also makes it feel that little bit more cohesive. Another key way I use custom designs is on the floor. I like to add foliage on my ground so there aren't large spaces of grass. You can also find cute designs that match your theme, for example fallen leaves in autumn or cute flowers for spring. Some furniture items you may not particularly like in their normal form, but if you want to add custom designs to them, it can totally change how an item works in your build. For example, I turned this wooden field sign into a flower planter box, and this also works for turning conventional items into other items, such as turning the record box into this drink crate, or transforming the red trash can into a British post box. Tabletop signs are another item that are severely underused in my opinion. These can be great for adding detail to your shops in their traditional form, but you can add custom designs that you can find to turn them into something differently entirely. For example, you could even turn them into butterflies or fairies. If you find a custom design that is transparent, then that will work. If your custom design slots are getting a little full and you don't have room for more simple panels, don't forget about the cutout standees. There are some amazing designs that the community have created, and some even make for whole feature builds, such as an ice cream truck. And for smaller items, you can also use hat custom designs. These can be placed down, and again, they come in all sorts of designs, from food to animals. There are so many different things that you can use. You may even find some dress designs that also work well for this too. When using custom designs, also think about how they interact with your island, and remember you can layer items with them. One of my favorite things to do is add a duck on top of or beside of a puddle, and there are many things that work well with this: a fallen log next to some leaves, or a mushroom item on top of a mushroom cluster. After the 2.0 update, I soon began using lots of trucks on my island, and you might be thinking why. And well, that's because with a custom design or two, you can change them into a number of different things, from coffee trucks, food trucks, and even a moving flower shop. These are a great filler build and something that my islands would be missing now if I didn't add them. If you don't like the look of certain buildings or villager homes, you can hide them behind tall items such as the medieval walls or castle items. I have whole videos dedicated to hiding your museum and nooks cranny, which you can find on my channel for inspiration. So I think that's all the tips I have for you right now. I'm sure there is more, and if you remember anything else, please leave them in the comments below. But just before we go, I quickly want to talk about inspiration. So I feel like this is one of the things that people struggle with most, and I know a lot of people will still log on from time to time and run around their islands and then log off because you aren't sure what to do. But if you get the urge to play, there are still a few different ways that you can take inspiration. And one of the key ones that I do is from my own real life inspiration, thinking about landmarks I've been to, and that kind of helps inspires me. You could also use this kind of idea for taking places from films or books and work that way for inspiration. Colors and custom designs are also a huge source of inspiration for me. Maybe a custom design will look nice with certain colors, and then I can just come up with a whole island theme just from looking at them. Taking inspiration from other creators is obviously a huge thing, and now there are so many amazing pictures online, whether it be from Pinterest, Instagram, or even a YouTube video. Just remember, put your own twist on things, because it may even be an improvement. But whatever you create, just have fun and let your creativity flow. I hope this video was helpful, and I really hope you have a great day, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.